these videos are going to be kind of more like snippets of videos, just because that's kind of how our days are going. So I may be wearing different things throughout the video because we're doing things here and there. And right now we're in the midst of getting our bunnies outside to get them fresh air and grass. We've been trying to do this every day. He's right there.
Where's this? You hit it.
And we've got these little play yards for them here. Eventually their hutches, we're gonna be moving their hutches outside as soon as we just make time to do it. But during the day, we want them out here getting sun and fresh air and grass. And we have two males that used to be good friends, and now we can't quite figure out what's going on with them. So we're trying to get them used to each other again. So hopefully we can put them together in one hutch, but it may or may not happen. 2 bunnies is better than the 26 that we had. So we're doing good in that way. So yesterday, one of my tasks that I was determined to get done was to start covering up my potatoes that have started to sprout above the ground. So if you remember from my other videos, I trenched them. I made a trench about 6 to 8 inches deep, buried the potato pieces, the chits, about 3 to 4 inches under dirt. And then I left mounds on the side, knowing that they would grow. And when they grew about 6 inches or so, I would start covering them up with dirt. So a lot of these have grown to almost 12 inches tall. Some of them are smaller, but I came out here yesterday and raked the dirt over them to cover the majority of their stems, because remember, where the dirt meets the stem is where it'll start to send out shoots for new potatoes. So if you want more potatoes, you want to be sure to mound them with dirt as they grow. It's similar to a tomato, and how if you put their stem underground, the stem will actually send out roots, will produce roots to establish the plant. Now for a tomato plant, it helps it to be stronger. It brings in more nutrients and more water. For a potato, those shoots will actually create more tubers. Something else interesting to note is that the closer you plant your potato plants together, the less tubers they will produce. Now, I've given my potatoes plenty of room on the sides to grow. I planted them about a foot apart. Some of them are a little closer, but they have plenty of room to grow on the sides and grow down. So we'll see. As many potato plants as I put in the ground, we should still have a really good potato crop bearing some sort of disastrous pest infestation or something along those lines. But let me show you kind of what I'm talking about, and I think you'll be able to see what I mean by covering the plant that was once down in the trench. So you can kind of see here amongst the weeds that I've been trying to weed out, the trenches for the potatoes. There's a row, here's a row. And over here where you see this dirt is the mound that I had left to eventually rake over the plants. So for example, there's a trench still kind of here, and this plant, see, I can actually put some more dirt around it. I'm just covering up the base, the stalk of the plant with dirt, and this will continue to grow. And as it grows, I'm going to rake more of this dirt over to cover it up. Similar to this one here, once they get taller, you just keep raking the dirt, and that will allow them to produce more potatoes. This row, ironically, was the last row that I planted and is actually the biggest. So who knows? It may just be the variety, maybe the time of year that I planted them. But now this looks more like a bed and less like a bunch of trenches. But you can see where I've raked the dirt over these potatoes. You don't have to do that per se, but it will allow you to have a bigger harvest down the road. These are my Brussels sprouts and cabbages here. They've been looking really good. I did notice a little bit of pest damage on a couple of these this morning, but nothing significant. I didn't see any caterpillars or anything on the leaves, but you can see here that something has been munching little holes. You always want to look on the underside of the leaf. That's usually where the pest is, but nothing significant. If I start noticing that they are being eaten more than they are growing, then I'll come out here and put like a spinosad soap on them, which is a pretty gentle pest deterrent Spinosad, Spinosad, and I've really found great results using that product on the majority of my pest issues. Chives finally blossomed. I actually transplanted these from the old house. I brought this and I don't remember if they bloomed this well at the last house. And I'm pretty sure this was a transplant from a friend. So it's kind of fun. It went from one house to my house and now to this house. And now it's looking beautiful out here with all the other plants. I came through here and planted some beans, some bush beans a week ago or so. And we had a little bit of cold spell last night, the night before. So I'm seeing a little bit of damage on these leaves, but there's still new growth coming right in here. So I'm not worried about completely losing this plant. We just lost that first set of leaves. But beans are very frost tender, and it wasn't even frosty. It was like 45, 46 degrees, but that was enough to kind of chill those plants. And in my pepper plants, I noticed the same. The difference is that if you have a continual frost temperatures, continual low temperatures, you can halt the growth of these frost tender plants. But one night here and there is not necessarily going to kill them unless it goes below freezing. So like again, I'm just seeing some damage here on these first set of leaves, but they should pop back, and because we're not going to have any more of those little cold spells come through. This next set of leaves should come in just fine. I'm also starting to see little radish heads developing in here. I'm pretty sure these are my French breakfast or lady slippers right there coming in. These are supposed to be ready in 30 to 40 days, depending on the variety. And so since we still had coolish weather, that they should be doing pretty good. The other thing I want to get done today is I have these summer savory starts that I started in the house 2 months ago. I don't even remember. And they're kind of on their last leg because I've been so focused on getting other things in the garden. They're supposed to grow really well with potatoes. That's where I grew them last year. And so I want to try to get these, I don't know, 6 or 7 plants in here with my potatoes. And then I've got some other little baby plants that, again, were sort of like not on the high priority list to get in the ground, to get those in. And then I just have a bunch of flower seeds. Like I'm gonna put some cosmos around my tomatoes. And I planted most of my nasturtiums. Calendula, I'm gonna plant some more calendula starts, just kind of put them around the garden for color and because they do so well with so many of these vegetables. So that's the goal today, is just to get a few more of these things in. And I'm continuing to do weeding, especially here in the potato and onion bed where a lot of the weeds are prolific. That's just gonna be ongoing. I'm not too worried about it, but I don't want them to get too overgrown. And at this point, it's just sitting back and waiting for everything to really get going. Okay, y'all, I did something a little crazy. I want squash. I want lots of winter squash. I want lots of pumpkins. And so I was just looking for some like random areas around my property, kind of away from the garden where I could plant some more squash. Because if squash bugs hit, if you have your squash plants kind of spaced out in various areas, you have a better chance of not losing your entire crop. And I was just looking for space for really big plants. So I have this bed right here that's got like lilies, like Asiatic lilies and 2 random bushes. There's not really much there. So I actually just planted several butternut squash plants and what was the other one? Oh, sweet pumpkin, like a sweet pie pumpkin, pumpkin pie pumpkins. I can't even think of the name of it. Sweet pie, I think is what they're called, over here. And then behind me at this other tree, on one side, I planted the sweet meat pumpkins that I really like, these. And on the other side, I did honey nut, which are like the smaller butternut variety. And I did like 4 or 5 seeds per plant. So we'll see. Once they get out past the tree, they're gonna get plenty of sunshine. And as long as I can remind my husband not to mow over the plants, which I feel like when they're big enough, it won't be an issue. We might have some really cool like squash vines going all over our property. And let me turn the camera around and I'll show you what I did with my big pumpkin. The other day I filmed us putting, you can see right in the distance, the white and the black tarp. That's where we planted our big giant pumpkins. Well, the day we planted them, for some reason I wasn't thinking, some chickens got out and they ate almost every single pumpkin seed we planted, which was so aggravating. Not so much because I can go buy a seed packet for $3. It was just the work that we put into it. So we went back the next day and we planted the seeds on the inside of the fence, and we laid the tarp down. And we're going to try to protect the plants until they're bigger. And then which will give us some time to get a fence around that area, because we have plenty of fencing we can put up so that we can have a huge patch out there for our giant pumpkins. And then in this front corner here, right there, is where I've got some other small pumpkin varieties with the corn that will trellis on the trellis there and the fencing. And then of course I've got a whole thing of summer squash planted in there too. And then right here, and this where it looks like a green patch, this is where I have all my onions and garlic. And so I actually went through there and just randomly planted some big squash plants in there too. I don't even remember what I planted. Is that just ridiculous? So it's gonna be like a guessing game. I'm gonna have to come back and rewatch this video to remember what I planted where. But as far as like what I planted in that garlic bed, I think it was like the big white pumpkin variety. I can't even remember. So anyway, hopefully from all of this random planting around the property, we'll get some pumpkins that we can use and sell at the farmer's market. So I think I'm done today. I need to come out and do a good water for all the seeds. I just planted a bunch of cosmos, bachelor's buttons, zinnias, forget-me-nots, and some of them I just scattered and cast among like the sweet potato vines and some other things. That's kind of like my lazy planting and also just experimenting. I just kind of want to see what happens when you do things like that, because I have tons of flower seeds. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But that's what we've done today. I've got some hollyhocks I need to plant in the ground that I grew from seed, and I'm gonna put them on this trellis right there, that brown trellis. They are like a champagne and a really dark black purple color. So I'm gonna put those there, and probably just need to sit down and see what I have left at this point. You know, I know I'll be doing a fall planting with more beans and peas, so I'm not worried about using all those up. And I did lose a couple pepper plants in the cold weather the last 2 nights, but then a couple survived that I hadn't planted yet. So I threw those in the ground, and then we'll just see what happens. This is kind of the fun of planting for me. Like, I may lose a couple things, but then I gain a few things that I wasn't expecting. So I don't know. I love the garden just for that reason. It can be frustrating sometimes, sure, when you lose a plant, but then it's really fun to see what happens on the other end. So we'll just keep going, and we'll see what we get out here.